Solipsism is often introduced in the context of relating it to pathological psychological conditions. Now, why is that? Why would an avenue towards the truth become correlated with such adverse associations? What would the motive behind that be? What are we trying to hide? What is it exactly that we don't want to discover? Well, part of gaining a greater understanding of what's being obfuscated comes from understanding the battleground properly. This isn't a conflict for territory. This isn't a quest for fortune and fame. This isn't a campaign for equality, justice, or world peace. This is a struggle for the autonomy and freedom, or the dominance and restriction of the mind. So the field of engagement isn't a person, place, or thing waiting somewhere out there in the external world. The field of engagement is the mind, the subjugation and mastery of which can only be accomplished through your own efforts. There isn't any savior coming to carry you out of ignorance, nor any great universal shift in consciousness that's going to facilitate it for you. If you wish to break the bonds of mental slavery, you will need to do it all by yourself. Some of us can help guide you. Some of us can assist you by pointing out a way. But ultimately, it's you who will have to take those steps. So, if we understand that the battlefield of this struggle is the mind, then it can be known where the work must be done. But this is exactly the kind of knowledge that is being suppressed. And the main methods used to quell this understanding are distractions, diversions, and overcomplications. For so long as we are constantly wrapped up in dealing with the appearances of sensory data, not only will we barely have a slim chance of discovering our true nature, but just the mere possibility of the subject of true nature will rarely even occur to us as an item of consideration. But just in the offhand chance that it does occur, stigmatizing any type of philosophy or ideological abstractions related to it should be more than enough to suffice. And this is already the case. Hence why the term solipsism is a pejorative, and the philosophy is generally portrayed with mostly negative connotations. This is to ensure that, if any such type of philosophy is ever encountered and contemplated, it will be easier to dismiss out of hand, which is further reinforced by everyone else's automatic unconscious rejection of it also. So if you ever happen to turn to a neighbor to perhaps seek some clarification on reality, he will gladly assist you to remain in mental slavery, by reassuring you that anything even remotely related to idealism is all just nonsense or crazy talk. Isn't that a relief? But what if the implications of solipsism are not just an intellectual rumination? What if awareness is actually starting to correlate that the experience of a so-called person and its external world are actually all an interwoven phenomena of mind-dependent reality? Uh-oh. Then what? Well, worry not. We've got that covered too. It's a rare occurrence, but just in case it ever should happen, there is a loose diagnosis that will set things right. It's called the Solipsism Syndrome. And accordingly, Solipsism Syndrome is described as a dissociative mental state. I say described and not classified because Solipsism Syndrome is not currently recognized as a psychiatric disorder by the American Psychiatric Association, though it shares similarities with depersonalization disorder, which is recognized. Uh-oh. An ominous association. Individuals experiencing the so-called Solipsism Syndrome feel that the world is not real in the sense of being external to their own minds. A very dire circumstance indeed. The syndrome is said to be characterized by feelings of loneliness, detachment, and indifference to the outside world. Quite some caveats, huh? Solipsism syndrome is only incidentally related to the philosophical solipsism, which is not a psychological state, but rather a philosophical position, namely that nothing exists or can be known to exist outside of one's own mind. Advocates of this philosophy do not necessarily suffer from solipsism syndrome, and sufferers of the syndrome do not necessarily subscribe to solipsism as a school of intellectual thought. Hence, the lack of ability to prove the existence of other minds does not, in itself, cause the psychiatric condition of detachment from reality. So, solipsism syndrome refers to a strictly psychological state in which a person feels that the world is not external to his or her mind. Periods of extended isolation may predispose people to this condition. Yeah, so better to seek than never be alone. And this will reduce the chance for the possibility for any introspective or meditative states. And also, don't forget, if we are alone, how will we stay informed? In particular, the syndrome has been identified as a potential challenge for individuals living in outer space for extended periods of time, such as astronauts or cosmonauts on long-term missions. And these concerns influence the design of artificial habitats. Now, isn't this all quite interesting? Are we to really believe that solipsism syndrome and philosophical solipsism are only related incidentally? That this etymological association came to be by accident or by mere coincidence? I think not. The implication is clear. Solipsism has a relation to mental illness. Better be wary of this, and suspicious of the philosophy. Yet, notice how solipsism syndrome is not officially recognized as a psychiatric disorder by the American Psychiatric Association, and is not listed in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So, while there is an active interest in discrediting solipsism, they won't go so far as to classify it as a disorder. Shit, they might as well. Why hesitate? The only reason why they probably don't is because the so-called syndrome is so rare that barely enough case studies exist to establish a sufficient body of information about it, other than to say it's some vague existential state where one can't differentiate a division between the mind and external reality. One cannot differentiate a division, huh? Only whoever said there was one. What if these rare instances of people in extreme isolated conditions becoming aware of the interconnectivity of reality and the mind were actual cases of people starting to become acquainted with the true nature of reality? And if so, what does that tell you about what the impact of constant bombardment of sensory disturbances have on the mind? It cultivates a false conditioning. Austrian psychiatrist Sigmund Freud stated that other minds are not known, but are only inferred to exist. That consciousness makes each of us aware only of his own states of mind. That other people too possess a consciousness is an inference which we draw by analogy from their observable utterances and actions, in order to make this behavior of theirs intelligible to us. It would no doubt be psychologically more correct to put it this way, that without any special reflection, we attribute to everyone else our own constitution, and therefore our consciousness as well, and that this identification is an essential of understanding. Freud's notations are similar to observations posed by philosopher René Descartes, exemplified in his now world-famous adage, cogito ergo sum, translated to mean, I think, therefore I am, which is also indicating a core implication about the true nature of reality, albeit an analytical one. Existence is fundamentally mental in nature, and the fact that this truth has become shrouded under a cloud of delusion is the result of an instilled conditioning that developed and became established through the employment of inferences and attributions. Now this is important to understand. The false mindset becomes habituated through fixating the attention solely on aspects within the field of perception, and then building a biased knowledge through the application of intellectual systems that correspond solely with the aspects within the field of perception. So the road of delusion starts with fixating on perceptibles, which draws emphasis away from awareness itself and places it instead onto the appearances of the imagination. It's this same type of tendency towards transfixation that makes lucid dreaming so elusive also. Lucidity also involves realizing the mental nature of the reality, which comes when awareness unlearns to constantly fixate on the dream details. And yes, I said unlearned, because with enough of this type of conditioning, inference and attribution become second nature. Hence, we become programmed to always reach conclusions on the basis of reasoning and evidence, which are the reflected phenomenal aspects of the mind used to justify the inferences and attributions. So, I posit that these rare cases of isolation that facilitate the onset of what's called Solipsism Syndrome are actually the beginnings of insight into true nature, and in fact are not a syndrome at all. A prospect that, for sure, terrifies the ego, which is why most people seem to unconsciously dread solitude and try to avoid it at all costs. True nature is empty, and this truth does nothing to validate the ego. So is it really any wonder that the ego clings to thoughts and seeks to circumvent things like isolation, sensory deprivation, and the quieting of the mind? as these are all practices that ultimately lead to meta-initiatives that reframe the ego as a lower priority. And the ego will naturally try to prevent this. Hence, there's no need to contemplate the motivation of others when considering the strong opposition to the truth, as the resistance actually originates from within and only appears to manifest as an outside configuration that seeks to misdirect you. The fact that such a state, described as Solipsism Syndrome, even exists is reason enough to be curious and get interested. And yet, so very little is known about it. A testament to the extreme aversion to the truth. There are actually conditions where reality can be naturally experienced as mind-dependent phenomena, and we have no inquiries about this. This is something people should be diving into head first, and yet it is ignored. We'd much rather apply ourselves to the unachievable pipe dream of exploring outer space. Despite the unfeasible prospect of such a venture, rather than simply looking within. We like the delusion of space travel much better. To travel in space means there is distances, and if there are distances, there are locations. And if locations, then there is separateness. This idea is so much more comforting than the truth. But hell, even discomfort would be preferable. Anything but the truth.